Through 1 week, and sure, it is just 1 week, Matt LaFleur is one of the front runners for Coach of the Year. How far has he come? Hear from a reporter who was there at the beginning and is still there now. Dianna Russini covered Matt LaFleur in Washington. She now covers the NFL for The Athletic. She offers her insight on Matt LaFleur's epic glow-up, Jordan Love, his perception around the league, and of course, the massive story in New York with the injury to Aaron Rodgers. All of that on a Fall Friday. Let's do it.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. And today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Dianna Russini on the show today, formerly of ESPN. She covered Washington football back in her DC local days, and now she is at The Athletic. She's been covering the Aaron Rodgers story very closely. She also has connections in the Green Bay organization, so she has a lot for us to dig into on today's show today. Before we get there, just a quick update. If you're not following it super closely, injury update. Aaron Jones, according to Matt LaFleur, made some progress in practice yesterday, but did not practice officially. He had his helmet on, but was not practicing. Christian Watson also not practicing. You have to believe that one of them is going to have to practice today, Friday, if they're going to be able to play on Sunday. Quay Walker is moving through protocols. As long as he recovers from practice yesterday, he should be good to go. That's a big one for the Green Bay Packers. Not exactly sure what's going on with Elgton Jenkins as he works through an injury, but I think they can manage without Aaron Jones. We saw them manage without Christian Watson. They're diverse enough in the run game, even if the drop-off from Aaron Jones to A.J. Dillon is big. I think they have enough creativity that they can create a short passing game that mimics a lot of the stuff that the run game brings them. I wouldn't be super worried about it. That being said, the line moved, according to our friends at FanDuel, from Packers -1 to Packers +1.5. That's a 2.5 point line move. That means the bettors think Aaron Jones probably not going to play. Matt LaFleur said he's going to give Aaron the full week. Aaron Jones, after the game, said, look, it's not a big deal. I could have gone back in the game. Him not practicing Wednesday or Thursday, I think, calls that into question. And then there is this interesting thing with David Bakhtiari. Is he just not going to practice all year? This is the type of, I was going to say floor. It's the type of surface in Atlanta that David Bakhtiari particularly hates. He might just sit out. I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility. So we'll see how this all shakes out. Maybe there are some rumblings in the ether that suggests that a lot of these guys are not going to play. I can't speak to that. The Packers are good enough to win this game regardless, because I think this defense can absolutely tee off on this offense. I was not that impressed with this offense at all against a shaky, I think, Carolina defense. And I wasn't impressed really with the Falcons defense. If you are a subtext subscriber, Scouting Report is in your inbox today, in your phone, in your text. And so I don't think there's that much there. This Falcons team is surface level to me. It's a lot of cool stuff on offense, but they weren't that efficient last week. And I just have a lot of questions. I think this offensive line is overrated. I was talking to a league source who was like, this offensive line is overrated. And he thought Green Bay was going to eat with their front. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. I picked the Packers yesterday. Aaron Jones or no Aaron Jones, I think the Packers win this game. But the injuries certainly something to monitor there. Let's get into it with our pal Dianna Russini. Joining me now of The Athletic, formerly of ESPN, Dianna Russini is here, and I have so much to talk to you about. I'm so glad that you were able to make this work. And so let's start with the biggest story this week. I know it's a story you've been covering closely, what's been happening with Aaron Rodgers, and what an absolute gut punch it was for Jets fans to be so excited about this for 6 months, and then in 4 plays for this all to be over. I know you're hooked in with what's going on in New York. What was the reaction that you got from that team, like, right away?
All of it. I got every emotion you could possibly think of, because that's really what they were feeling, right? They win a game with Zach Wilson in walk-off fashion, while at the same time really coming to grips with the fact that they lost their Hall of Fame quarterback, the guy that was supposed to lead them to the Super Bowl after all this hype and everything that they gave up to get him. And it was a little bit of, it felt like watching a mourning period, meaning like a funeral almost. I know Robert Saleh was saying, please stop writing our obituary here. We're not dead. But he said that because he understands that it feels like a death. So, it was interesting talking to people late Monday night after the game into Tuesday morning. People were not sleeping, players, coaches, everyone was just wired from all the emotion and events. But then once I think the decision makers realized, we don't have time to sit and lick our wounds here. We got to move on and figure out what we're going to do next. The Zach Wilson plan really came about pretty quickly. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's comfortable in this Nathaniel Hackett offense, and he's been with the team. Riding with him into Dallas versus trying to bring in a veteran quarterback at this point just wouldn't make a lot of sense. So here we are a few days out from the game, and they're still they're talking to veteran quarterbacks around the league right now that are free agents. I haven't heard of them making any splash moves in terms of a trade, but I know they're looking into it. But in terms of the overall building confidence, they want Aaron Rodgers, but they feel good knowing that Zach has really taken a big step forward this year.
You had a piece about cut blocking that became a touch point, I think, for a lot of people on Twitter. Some people felt like it was ass covering. And you even clarified, you were like, hey, this is an explanation for what was going on. Can you just walk us through sort of like what you started hearing and why you felt like, okay, we got to put something together here?
Yeah, well, you just look at the fact that he ran 4 plays. And to me, those are going to be the most important 4 plays we're probably going to talk about this season. And it's only week 1.
Right. Yeah.
So when I went back to look at to look at the actual plays when I got home, I made observations of what I was watching and seeing it. And so then I just started to reach out to people around the organization to maybe even take me in a little bit more depth of what was the game plan, what plays were called, who was making these calls, how did Aaron feel about it? And our Jets reporter at The Athletic does a phenomenal job as well. And he's got really good sources too. And so we just hopped on a call and said, I think this story's interesting from a space of let's pull the curtain back. How did we get here? Not so much this is the reason why. Because another part of all of this emotion is people want to blame. Everyone wants to point the finger at somebody right now, because I do think it makes you feel better, right? When it's like, this is the reason why this happened versus injuries happen, right? That's a tough pill to swallow. But if you can just say the turf is the reason or the protection's the reason, there's, for whatever reason, it kind of calms people more. But that's not the reason. The turf is not the reason. The play calling isn't the reason. It was going to happen whether it was the first moment in the game or week 8, it was bound to happen. So with that all in mind, to me, that was really just interesting. And I hope the people that read it felt the same way.
All right. More with Dianna in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Buying tickets to events that you're excited to go to shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start just getting excited for the thing you get to go to. They have flash deals and last-minute tickets. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. And one of the coolest features, absolutely one of the coolest features, is you can click on the seat and they'll show you the view. You don't have to go searching. You don't have to Google image search. None of that. You just get to see, this is what I can see from my seat. It is the ultimate back test to see, okay, I know what I'm getting when I'm making a purchase. It is so vital with any ticket, especially to concerts. You're like, okay, what is my sight line going to be in basketball, football? You know what you're going to see. For a concert, though, you don't always know. They mess with those sight lines. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Why you want free money? Free money's great. Terms and conditions apply. Create that account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Everydayers. We're live on Sunday after the game. Come check us out on YouTube. It's going to be a fun time no matter what happens.
It is funny, though, to me, because it is like, and I think you will appreciate this, as someone with two little ones at home, like my son, when he throws something because he's mad, I go, do you feel better now? What does he always say? No, it doesn't make you feel better, but you think that it will make you feel better when you do it. And then when you're done, you're just sort of like, oh, well, I guess I did that thing now.
There is also a little bit more to it from a for looking through the prism of knowing how much control Aaron Rodgers has in the building from day one. Right. And how there's no decision is made without the thought of, will Aaron like this? Is Aaron okay with this? You didn't need my inside knowledge to understand that. You saw it in Hard Knocks, right? And if anyone has been around following.
And my audience did not need that the lesson on how much control Aaron Rodgers is going to get.
No. And rightfully so. It's an organization that has no idea how to win. Bring in a guy that knows. Right. And let's give them the keys to the car. And that's what they did. Which, I have said for months that the Jets should get some credit for that, because I think there's some organizations that would have messed that up. Like, no, we're going to do it our way. Unfortunately, but they were smart. They were like, Aaron, this is yours. Go. So that's why I also found this really interesting, knowing, and after hearing David Bakhtiari, explain Rodgers' preferences in terms of just wanting a normal protection, because he likes that idea of having a little bit more time, extend the play. And I almost even understood the story at in more depth once I heard Bakhtiari really share, because it just goes to show you is in line with what everyone else has been saying as well, which is Rodgers, the cut blocks is not his preference.
It is, I think, worth mentioning that it did come out after, not before. That was what sort of like raised my antenna. I'm like, oh, this is a thing that's happening now after the fact. So it becomes a blame thing, right? It just, there's a timing aspect to it.
I guess maybe because to me, that detail wasn't that important.
Right. I understand. Completely.
Like in camp, if I saw it, I wasn't going, I wonder if Aaron likes it. Like, because if I'd be doing, I'd be spending all my time finding out, was he in? And my assumption was, if they're doing it, he's approving it. So why am I going to dig on it, right? So the result, what we saw last night, forced you to question, well, how did we get here?
Absolutely. Let's shift gears here a little bit and go back, because you were in Washington when Matt LaFleur was in Washington, when they had that staff that turns out to be one of the most incredible staffs like ever assembled in modern NFL history. Do you remember your early impressions of Matt LaFleur? Like, what were your interactions with him like?
So before I get into it, it was my first year covering the NFL, actually. So I had no idea how talented these men were. None. And we were all we were like relatively the same ages, and to me, my observation from the outside, covering the team, watching, Kyle Shanahan, watching Sean McVay, and, the list just, it truly goes on forever. It's unbelievable how much talent was on that roster from the coaching standpoint. And seeing Matt LaFleur, they all had a very similar attitude that I had back then, which is we need to work hard to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what stood out to me about Matt LaFleur then was he was always grinding. And his personality back then is almost identical to what it is now, which I think is a compliment to him, that he hasn't changed much, that he has stood the same person through the years, despite going from being an assistant, a low-level assistant, to now the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. So, just pull the curtain behind him, like who you're seeing it's not far from what I saw, but also the depth of knowledge that he does bring and the confidence in his playbook and play calling has always been something that I've heard and also have seen has had success. And, even going back to his days in Tennessee, that building always spoke really highly of what he could do. But, as Green Bay Packer fans know, I think everyone just wanted to see, what does Matt LaFleur look like without a 4-time league MVP? Yeah. What does it look like? And we saw a little bit of it.
Yeah, it looks very different. And in a lot of ways, much the same, right? Put up 31 points. That's what they did with Aaron Rodgers, which is a little remarkable to me. I look at this team and I see a young team that Matt, to me, is better suited to coach in a lot of ways than the last few teams when they're this veteran team. He got thrown into the fire and I think handled that extremely well. At least from the outside, it seems like this young team that he can coach, and that seems to be his methodology as a coach, is as a teacher. What do you think of that idea that there is this maybe a better overlap of skills with this team versus some of the other teams, which is kind of crazy to think about because he had so much success with the other teams.
Look at that coaching branch, so to speak, of what their styles all are. They're all teachers first, and they tell you that. Even someone like a Raheem Morris, who people don't even put in that group because he's a little older and louder in so many ways. They obviously all learned under a Mike Shanahan types and have now put that in their tool set, so to speak. And that's how they come across and can communicate so well, because they learned it through such a great foundation in Washington.
Right.
One of the things that stands out whenever I've covered the Rams, are how players are so receptive to a Sean McVay. He just has that great balance of being a player's coach, but still being a disciplinarian. And so when you're talking about a young team like the Packers, where they're learning the league and they're trying to find themselves, he's the perfect personality for that transition and that growth and that support, really. He is not an egocentric type of leader at all. And that's what I've always admired about him as well. And just watching his growth is he's never made it about him. Never. The cameras love him, but that's not his choice, right? Like, he's constantly getting the attention because that's what happens when you're the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. You become part of the story. But
Aaron Rodgers would tell you it's the eyebrows. They're just meticulously groomed.
It bothers me as a woman that is trying to attain some sort of beauty at times, which I'm sure those watching right now are like, well, work harder, honey. But he has had those eyebrows forever. So this has been going on, Jason Kelsey's maybe the only other person I know that has eyebrows so defined. But way better grooming done by Matt LaFleur than Jason.
What's the glow up for him? You knew him when he was sort of like the nerd guy with the glasses on and the short hair, and now he's like a sex symbol on Twitter.
Look, if you really want to put together a cast of glow ups, you should see what that coaching staff looked like then to now. I mean, all of them. I give them all the credit in the world. Whereas, I went downhill, they took off, and they're all a bunch of studs now with tons of money. So good for them.
All right, more to come here with Dianna Russini on Locked On Packers as we get ready for Packers-Falcons Week 2. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. It is so easy in today's world for your mind to race. Anxiety about your family, anxiety about your relationships, about your kids. I have anxiety about my kids on a daily basis, a near constant basis, it seems, about your work. It is a common thing. And these racing thoughts can keep you up at night. They can wake you up early. They can prevent you from just being able to enjoy life. Something as simple as not being able to get your mind to quiet a little bit is something that BetterHelp can help you with. It is an opportunity for you to get a little bit better, hence the name. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. If you're not, if you don't think therapy can help you, this is a great example of something that you may not have thought of. That, hey, if I talk to a licensed professional, they might be able to help me with this thing and I can get through my day a little bit easier, a little bit better. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get a break from your racing thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Check us out on Subtext. Like I said, Scouting Report. I watched the tape, watched the All-22, broke it down. It's in your phone right now. And go check out what we're doing at The Leap, theleap.football. I wrote my Friday piece today. And not dissimilar from the discussion last week, except, okay, if you can't build the plane out of Aaron Jones, what do you do? What do you do? The answer, you figure it out, and you trust Matt LaFleur to figure it out.
It's like the high school versus now photos on Twitter right now. There's a sliding doors moment that still gets talked about, and I know you reported it closely. The AJ Brown trade happens, and that sort of came together in a weird way. And I have my buddy Jason Hirschhorn at The Leap brings it up all the time. Like, why do the Packers not make a move like that? And that's just kind of not how this works. Like, things don't always hit the quote unquote open market. Can you just like walk us through exactly how that came together and if there's any, knowledge that you have about other teams, the Packers, et cetera?
Yeah, I haven't talked to AJ Brown in so long.
I know it was a long time ago, but I just feel like it was a move that you hear Packer fans say, why didn't they do this?
Yes, especially when we're going to see him tonight, and on Thursday Night Football, and he obviously is such a central piece of that offense and is playing some of his best football, and he's still so young.
Yeah.
And that's what's always made that trade very suspect to me.
Yeah, weird.
I didn't understand it. And look, I talked to a lot of people in that building at the time, and I was certainly made to look as a fool on television because all the information I was getting was like, stop bothering us. We're not trading AJ Brown. Like, I don't, they're a little bit of a tough staff when it comes to information. They don't really like to say much. So you have to like really wear them down. And I was wearing them down. And the same answer was just always, we're not trading them. We're not, from top to bottom. I mean, I talked to everyone I possibly could talk to. And it was obvious that this organization was all on the same page. So I got a tip from the Philly side, actually, on the night of the draft.
Yeah.
That something was going on. And I'm like, this is the worst piece of information I've ever received, because I know that the Tennessee Titans are not trading him. Right. Like, I'm not wasting my time, but I was like, let me just see. And so then I got another person saying, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they are going to trade AJ Brown. So the way you have information correct, I have found over the years, is when you don't get an answer sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So then I started to reach out to the Titans people and AJ's people, and no one was answering me. I'm like, this is actually happening. So I think I was with the Giants that night, or the Jets. I forgot who my team was, but I couldn't even tell you who they picked that night because I was all in on that story. And then I finally got the green light that had happened. And it was right before their pick came up when they made that trade. And I wound up digging on it afterwards. And from the information I gathered, for Packers fans, you should feel better about this. The conversations that were being had were between Howie and John Robinson at the time, and only them. This wasn't where, from what I can gather, there wasn't John Robinson calling everybody. It was him and Howie had this relationship, and both felt like they could get the best out of it. So I will paint a picture as the Packers just couldn't even get in because they didn't even know about it, And look, teams did call. I know teams called to find out because I know another team that asked, a very, very good team asked about an openness to it during the league meetings. And they were told, no, we're not doing that. So I think it all just changed really quickly when the Titans realized that they were not going to be able to get a deal done, and they didn't want a distraction around their organization if he were to hold out and cause these problems, because that's just not how they like to run business down there. So hopefully that helps with the feeling and frustration when you see a receiver of that caliber out there, knowing that it just wasn't on the shopping list.
I think what has happened since then may change the perception of that now. But I wanted to ask, because I remember listening to you explain it on Ryan Russillo's show like a year ago. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I have to ask more about that.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to talk to you about is maybe where we should have started. And that's Jordan Love. The league did not get a chance to see very much of Jordan Love, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have ideas about what they thought he was or thought what he could be. What do you hear when you talk to teams or coaches or players about Jordan Love?
The answers and information I was always collecting on him was always question marks, which is why I think that he was able to come out. And this is by the way, this is outside the Packers, right? I'll get to what the Packers were sharing. Outside was always just, yeah, there could be, yeah, he's good at this, and that, So they're really the rest of America, because I do think that there was a bit of a negative feel. And I was obviously at ESPN for years and listened to tons of analysts talk about how he's being set up to fail. And when I was digging on the story a little bit during the summer about how long is this leash going to be for Jordan, that's when sometimes you have to figure out how people are giving you answers on players because they want to paint a positive picture, right? No one wants to be like, our starting quarterback stinks. No one wants to tell you that, right? But the optimism was, now that I'm reflecting on it, it was really good. It was controlled. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't like, wait till you see this. It was never like that. But there was way more belief that he could play than I will admit that I had as somebody that's just been observing it. So the building should be going, they don't have to do anything. They won one game. We have a long season ahead here. But credit to them because they were able to get him ready, and credit to him as well. Do you think, I know not everyone has the luxury of having Aaron Rodgers there, but it does seem like, and Matt LaFleur said this early in the season, like, I think we'd hit on more quarterbacks if more quarterbacks were given time to sit. But that's just not the luxury most teams have. Patrick Mahomes got a year because they had Alex Smith. Most quarterbacks just have to play. I know you talk to a lot of coaches and a lot of front office people. Is there like secretly an appetite like, hey, this would actually be better if we could do this, we just can't? Or is it just like, no, these guys got to play? More the latter, actually. There's more, we're picking them this high in the draft to be the future. The only way you get better is to go play, which is what was working against Jordan all this time. Was how can he get good if he is not playing the game? It's that simple, right? And you hear this from guys that play the position. It's the only way to get better. And anyone watching and listening right now can apply it to their own lives. Think about anything that you do all the time. You don't think twice about it because you're just doing it. But anything that you're not doing a lot of is going to be a struggle for you until you figure it out. So most GMs, coaches I speak to are more in the lane of, we got to get him out there. It's just a scary lane to be in because it comes with so much heat and pressure because we've seen what these rookie quarterbacks look like when they're out there. And they don't look good, with the exception of, obviously Joe Burrow was fantastic. Justin Herbert in his own way, finding out a few minutes before he's got to run out there and lights it up. And we all knew within 10 seconds that this guy's a superstar, right? Those are just so few and far between to hit it like that. And I remember back in Kansas City, and I had done work on Patrick, but I don't cover college football, so I wasn't up to date with all the knowledge on who Patrick Mahomes was and the type of player he was. But the guys kept telling me about this backup quarterback, how good he is at practice. And I was like, yeah, cool. Like, yeah, he's the future, but Alex is out. Alex is really, I think a lot of people forget Alex was really respected back then, and he still is. But
yes,
he was a solid quarterback and could do the job. And I understand completely looking back now why they went with him over Patrick in terms of risk. But it was
Did the people in KC go, wait till you see this? Did they, like you mentioned that didn't happen with Jordan, but were there people with the Chiefs going, wait until you see this guy?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And it was quick. It wasn't like it took a year. It was fast. It was, it was cool. And obviously now knowing the story and remembering all those conversations and perhaps maybe dropping the ball and not really digging on it as hard as I should have back then. But now, I mean, that'd be the front page of The Athletic would be, is the backup quarterback the true star of this team? And hopefully that'll be the story for Green Bay. After all these years, the true star was sitting on the bench.
I mean, it would be an outlier, right? Historical outlier. Like teams don't go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. To go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and if Jordan Love is anywhere near those guys' caliber, we'd never seen it before. So it's just one of those wild things. Dianna, thank you so much for taking the time, and we will hopefully get a chance to do this again soon.
Maybe this is just showing my dorkiness, but I just got the goosebumps when you said that. Just thinking about the idea that the Packers could go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and if Jordan Love were to be that, I mean, I just think that'd be so freaking cool for the Packers and obviously everyone who loves them. So thank you for having me on. I'm sure we'll be doing it more during the season.
All right. Thanks to Dianna for joining the show. Awesome to catch up with her. She is plugged in all over the league. And so I thought that insight, especially on like the AJ Brown trade, for example, not something we talk about often, but because I knew that she had some particularly good inside information there, I thought that was good to share on a Packers show, even though not in fact a Packers trade. We're going to be live on YouTube, our Locked On Packers YouTube page after the game. I'm going to do a live stream on Bleacher Report first. Just some winners and losers, quick hits. Go check us out there. And then we're going to go live on YouTube. So it'll be 25 minutes after the game. We'll do it. And that'll also give me a chance to actually hear some of the post-game stuff. On the early games, I think it's okay to wait a little bit. Later games, especially night games, I want to go right away because first of all, it's late. And second of all, because I think there's an urgency to it. It's the national game. Everyone's watching. It's a little bit of a different thing. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe anywhere you get podcasts and go to our YouTube page, subscribe, and come hang out with us live on Sunday so you can stay Locked On Packers.